Hello, my name is Nicole Armstrong, and this YouTube video is fulfilling the requirement for part 3 of topic 4 for my online communication, technology, and culture course. So my project for this assignment will be going over the technological defects. So what I mean by that is how technology is negatively impacting face-to-face interactions and what can be done to get ourselves and those we are with off of our phones. Well, I read directly off of this slide. That's the only slide I will be doing that on. So let's get into it. First and foremost, how is technology hurting us? And when I ask that question, I'm referencing how is technology hurting us in face-to-face interactions? So what are the pitfalls or the consequences of our overabundance and overuse of technology in regards to how we interact with people when we are sitting across the table from them or sitting next to them in a class, anytime we are communicating face-to-face? So the first thing is that we tend to be looking down at our phones more instead of looking at people or at our surroundings. A perfect example of this was the other day I had a student who was walking up the stairs on her cell phone go around the corner and plow right into me because she didn't see me because she was too busy looking at her phone. And when she plowed into me, when she hit me, she seemed more startled than anything else that I had gotten in her way, even though if she had been paying attention to her surroundings, she wouldn't have run into me in the first place. She would have seen me coming. More so before classes or waiting for the bus or anywhere where people have downtime. When 10, 15 years ago they would look around them or strike up a conversation with somebody, instead they pull out their cell phones, they plug in their earbuds and they listen to music or surf Facebook or look at their fantasy football scores or whatever else appeals to them on their technological device. Instead of taking that moment to engage in conversation, get to know somebody, maybe even make a lifelong friendship or a conversation that you would have never had you not sat down in that point in time, struck up a conversation with a person. Some of my best friends were met because I sat down on the school bus on the way to school and started talking to the person next to me, and now we have been friends for over 10 years. That would never have happened if she was looking down at her cell phone or I was looking down at mine. The next one is that we are finding answers in technology instead of finding answers in conversation. So I live on the IMDb app on my phone. I will admit it. It is convenient, it is easy, it is fun, but it has taken the fight out of or the discussion out of a lot of the conversations that I've had with other people. And that instead of having a good-natured argument over who was in this movie or what else is Natalie Dormer in, or when did this movie come out, or what movie made Johnny Depp famous, instead of having a discussion about it, which helps us get to know each other better and just allows us to engage in a dialogue that gets us both invested in a topic, we pull up our cell phone, we look up the answer, and we have the answer. And that's great in that it lets one person be right and one person be wrong, but it also is unfortunate because it removes a lot of that dialogue and a lot of that discussion. The next major problem with technology is that it allows for something called text speak. So within text messaging or instant messaging or even in some emails, people are starting to do a lot more texting. So text speak. So they're using LOL instead of laugh out loud, or the letter U to represent YOU. And that makes you look unprofessional or uneducated, or that you aren't truly invested in what's going on. And whenever text speak makes its way into professional settings, it ends up hurting your career or hurting your status or the way that you are viewed by others, and it could be the difference between you getting a promotion or not just because you don't know the proper way to write an email or the proper way to engage in a conversation. And that text speak is making its way into verbal dialogue between people. I have heard people say LOL, or more often than not, people will shorten words. So they'll say def instead of definitely. And that stems from the acceptability of text speak, which happens between two people engaging in electronic technological conversation. The next major thing that technology is doing to hurt our face-to-face interactions is that it's removing the need for spontaneous thinking. So when you're online or you're writing an email or you're writing a text message, you can take the time to think about what you want to say. You can type out what you want to say, reread it, decide you don't like it, delete it, and then type something new. And you can keep doing this until you have it exactly how you want it, and then you hit send, and that's the message that gets sent out. Well, that's really great when you want to make sure you're saying the right thing. It makes it harder when you are in a face-to-face interaction and you don't have that time or that privilege or access to something that will allow you to work through what you want to say, and instead you just need to say something. It removes your ability to do that, or you don't practice that as much because it's not something that you have had to have done as much because you are relying on electronic communication. It takes out the spontaneousness of face-to-face interactions, which leads to people to be more quiet or more reserved or less willing to share because they are worried about saying the wrong thing and they've never had to think on their feet and then speak right away. Or when they have had to do it, it's been so infrequent that it's not a skill that many people have mastered. Technology instead of engagement. So this one kind of goes to the looking down instead of looking at. So it's when people would rather be engaged in their technology, when they would rather be part of the technological world, they'd rather be on Facebook or sending a text message or listening to music instead of engaging in a discussion going on around them, instead of engaging in pre-class conversation that will allow you to make friends with a classmate that might be able to help you if you're struggling with that class. But any time that we choose to go to our phones or go to our laptops or go to our tablets instead of going to a human being, a real-life person, then that skill or those interactions are gone, and you're not going to be able to practice those skills, and you're not going to have the access to those people because you're choosing to engage in your technology instead of engaging in a real-life person. The final way that technology is hurting us is by allowing us to create what I'm calling a false self. So we create our online identities, which are usually different than our in-person identities because we can choose what aspects of our identities that we show, what aspects of our identities that we hide, and it allows us to create this false sense of who we are online that when it needs to translate into the real world, it can't, because there are certain things that you cannot hide in the real world that you can hide when you are just communicating via technology. I don't have a slide for this, but I do want to mention really quick that I'm talking just about the ways that technology can hurt us, but I also recognize that there are many, many, many ways, probably more ways, that technology is helping us and giving us access to more things that we wouldn't have access to and allowing us to communicate in ways we wouldn't be able to communicate with. But the bottom line is that pendulum has swung so far that we are so dependent on technology that it's starting to affect our face-to-face interactions. So, I want to give you my personal top 5 ways to encourage people to put away their cell phones. So these are 5 tips or 5 suggestions I have that you can implement to encourage other people to put their cell phones away and engage in a conversation with you. So number 5, take it away. So this is something that I do in my classes if I need to. I've never really had to do it. I did it more when I was a substitute teacher, but you take away their cell phone. You ask them to turn it off, to hand it over to you. You put it in a bin at the front of the classroom, or you make them put it away so that they don't have access to it, but you take away their cell phone so that they cannot look at it without getting it back from you. This one's number 5 because this one usually leads to quite a bit of hostility. If you try to take away people's cell phones, take it away so that they no longer have access to it whatsoever, it tends to create issues in that they feel like you are forcing things on them, that you are being unfair, and for a lot of people it's an identity crisis. You're removing one of their core ways of communicating that makes them really nervous and really have high anxiety if they physically have the cell phone removed from their person or from being able to do it. So that's why that's the 5th one. The 4th way is to ask them to turn their cell phones off and tuck it away, but assure them that they will be time allocated later for them to take it out and look at it. So this one is helpful in that it will encourage them to put it away because they know that at some point in time they'll be able to take it out and look at it again. But this one is problematic because as soon as people know that they're going to be able to look at their phones again, then they're going to be constantly wondering about when that time is going to occur, and that can lead to distractions within the conversation, which is why this one's only number 4. So the third tip or idea you can do to help encourage people to put away their cell phones is to ask them why. Ask them why they are so dependent on their cell phones, and see if you can engage in a conversation that's going to have them talking about why is that cell phone so important to them, and why is it so important to them right now. So like the picture showing, it's giving you very valid reasons why people are so addicted to their cell phones. But if you can talk to them about that and make a good case for why cell phones should be put away specifically at this point in time, it's going to give you a chance to maybe enlighten them and get them thinking about their own cell phone use. But why this one is just number 3 instead of number 2 or number 1 is that it can be a lengthy conversation that could also turn into a debate or even an argument where people feel the need to justify their decisions to you, and maybe they don't feel the need to want to justify their decisions to you. So while asking them why and trying to engage in this conversation could be helpful, it could also have the adverse effect, which is why this one's only number 3. So get into the best of the best. Number 2 is to challenge them. So what I mean by that is challenge them to put away their cell phones for 30 minutes, or challenge them to turn off their Wi-Fi so they can't access anything online, or challenge them to put their phone on silent but just on vibrate. But when you give somebody a challenge, then they feel like it's almost a game. It's something that they have to accomplish. It's something that they have to prove. And when people feel invested in a game or in an activity or in a challenge, they're more likely to meet it. So whatever your suggestion is, whatever your challenge is, our competitive natures are likely to want to take over, which is going to encourage us to meet that challenge, and then that way you can usually accomplish your goal, but then the other person also feels like they're accomplishing a goal. So that's what makes this one so great, but there's still one better out there, which is just simply ask them to put it away. But when you ask them to put it away, make sure that you're doing it in a way that doesn't make it sound accusatory, doesn't make it sound like you are diminishing what they are doing, but instead just explain why you want them to put it away, explain your own personal reasons for wanting to put your cell phone away, removing temptation, what have you. The more you can ground it in why it's important for you to have them put their cell phone away and why it's important for them to put their cell phone away, and then just to ask them politely to do it, is going to be, in my personal opinion, the most effective. This is the one that I do in my class. I ask my students to put their cell phones away. If I see them out, I gently remind them that I would prefer not to see cell phones and to please put them away. But by asking them nicely, then it's no longer a demand, it's no longer a threat. Instead, it is you asking something of them and them choosing to fully appreciate the fact that you would ask them to do something and deciding that it's something that they can do and choosing to put their cell phone away themselves. I've got one more bonus major tip to encourage other people to put their cell phones away, and that is to lead by example. My cell phone stays in my office when I'm teaching my classes. I don't even ever have my cell phone on my person when I'm in my classes. If you're asking somebody else to put their cell phone away, or you're challenging somebody to complete a task which requires them to put their cell phone away, you better be willing to put your money where your mouth is and lead by example. So that is my major suggestion, because there's nothing worse than being asked to put your cell phone away and then you look over and that person is on their cell phone. So this is my reference page for where I got all of the pictures that I showed in there. All of the rest of this came from my own knowledge that might be applied to other articles, but I found them in several different places, enough places that they did not require an actual citation. So now that I have explained the importance of removing technology from our face-to-face interactions, and I've given you tips to encourage yourself and other people to tuck your cell phones away and engage in face-to-face interactions, I want to challenge all of you to do the same. So from now on, whenever you have the opportunity to tuck your cell phone away and talk to a stranger, talk to somebody on the bus, or get to know a classmate better, I want to highly encourage you to do so, just like I do. I make a point before and after my classes to just have conversations with my students, to get a chance to be able to engage with them in a face-to-face interaction, and I've noticed that the more I do that, the more that they are willing to tuck away their own cell phones.